Hello, friends. So happy to have you here with me today at Radical Joy. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time with me, well, I'm glad you're here. Each week, I'm here with you talking to myself about things that weigh on my mind and heart, hoping if you're dealing with something similar, we can adjust both our perspectives as you listen. Hey, if you're struggling with something that needs immediate attention, please know that help is available. Just dial 988 nationwide in the U.S. to reach the Mental Health and Suicide Crisis Hotline. All of us here at CLW Studios believe that mental health is a vital part of our well-being. The more people I meet and the more places I go, the more I realize how important it is to make people aware of the fact that there is no shame in enjoying the parts of your life that are incredible. It's time for some radical joy. And this week, the three fingers pointing back at me are for moving the needle. I can't help feeling as though a lot of us feel just a little bit stuck in what's going on in our lives, whether that is the way we see the country going, the way our professional lives are going, in our interpersonal relationships, in the connections that we form between family members or friends, people that are important in our lives, those connections or the lack thereof. And for whatever reason, it just came to mind this week, moving the needle. Sometimes getting stuck, the only thing that you could really hope to do in the immediate here and now is just to watch that needle move. It feels as though we often find ourselves in a bit of a little, maybe some stasis. You just kind of find yourself in one spot and you spin. You don't make forward movement. Luckily, very few of us make backward movement, I'm hoping. It could be that you are making enough money to cover, but you're not in a place where you're necessarily feeling the abundance of your work to income ratio. It's one of those things where I think that we need to continue to wonder what that looks like. What does moving the needle look like to you in your life? Is that professional? Do you enjoy your job? Is the money that's coming across from the hours that you put in, is it commensurate to what you think is equal? Is it just? Is it justifiable? I spend 40 hours of work here. This is the money I bring home. I can live with that. Or not. I don't know if you can hear it. I'm recording this episode on July 4th, so there's a lot of popping and rockets red glaring outside the window, but I don't know how to record this without getting that in the background. So if it's there and it's bothersome, I apologize. If you can't hear it, know that I'm enjoying it in running in the background. Moving the needle in your professional life is one thing. Moving it in your personal life is another animal entirely. That's a whole other situation. And I'm curious in those kinds of things how we do that. I was just having a conversation with a good friend of mine. I've known him for years and years and years. And he's talking about these sorts of things. And I said something in our conversation that I wanted to bring to the table for us today. I keep trying to borrow the monkeys from other people's circuses. And I have more than enough of my own if I'm going to get right down and deadly with it. I was like, I have more than plenty of those simian type animals up underneath my 3-ring ridiculous. Why in the world do I continue to attempt to borrow from others? He was telling me about the problems that he was having with his ex. And he felt like she was cheating on him. I was like, well, please tell me why this is a cheat if you are not in a relationship with this person. Sometimes the needle we're looking to move isn't on a gauge in our own vehicle. How about that? Could we think about that for just a second? We continue to make an impact or attempt to make some sort of influence on something outside our own scope, and it's frustrating. It's difficult. It is disappointing. It's disheartening. It can be maddening. It can push you to anger, despondency, disappointment, so many of these things when we had no reason being in that fight in the first place. Sure, if you're in a relationship that it ends, that is disappointing. It can also be very helpful. It can be very freeing. It can be any number of positive, quote unquote, adjectives as well. Whenever we try to move our needle, I think it's really important that we keep that in our own instrument cluster. I'm just all over the place with our metaphors today. I don't know what's going on with it, but I think it's important to sort of give that the attention that it needs. If we're looking to make something different, if we're looking to push something along a track, a line, I want to make sure it's something that is of a weight that we can do that. If it's too heavy, work on making that burden lighter so it'll be easier to push along its journey. Number two, once it starts moving, that's whenever we can expect to see that needle start to quiver as well. Whenever I think of moving the needle, that almost always comes in sort of a speedometer type situation. It hardly ever comes as like maybe a heart monitor or anything like that. It's always, okay, I'm stuck at 35. How do I go faster? Great question. How do you go faster with something like that? Well, first, I need to acknowledge the fact that I'm not going as fast as I think I should be. So what I'm going to do is attempt to perhaps speed this up, put more fuel in the tank to make sure whenever I ask more of the machine that it doesn't run out on me on the freeway. I also want to clear my path. I can't go any faster than what's in front of me, can I? I mean, I could. I think that'd be damaging both to me and to the person in front of me, to the obstacle. So what I need to do is make sure that all of my conditions are favorable for moving that needle. See where this is going? I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm really digging it because what I'm thinking of, I want to paint this picture just as clearly as I can. My dad was a Chevelle guy. Now, I know he had a banana yellow one, and I know he had a bright purple metallic one, which I think is fantastic because knowing him now, I'm just like, maybe he would. I don't know. I can't help thinking that he was a bit more peacocky whenever he was a younger man. That's also a really powerful vehicle. It moves fast. It is beefy. It takes up space. It commands attention and respect. And the instrument cluster on it is very, very analog. Okay, there's not a digital thing to go wrong. It's like, okay, if you go up by 5 miles per hour, that needle is going to go up by 5 miles per hour. It's a very if A, then B situation, which I love. I love the honesty of it. I love the originality of it. I love the fact that it's got such a smoking hot chassis. Let's just call it what it is. Packaging is important. And in order to move that needle, you got to make sure the tank is full because you don't want to romp the gas and then run out and find yourself on the side of the road. One. Number two, you want to make sure that there's nothing in front of you because if you run into something like, I don't know, a parking pylon, you run into the neighborhood convenience store, which I have been known to do in the past, or you run into another driver in their vehicle because maybe they're not moving as quickly or maybe they're just not quite as responsible in their vehicle ownership and operation. So you got to keep eyeballs out for something like that. So many things influence how we can move the needle in our own situations. We got to be mindful of it. Once we realize it, I think it's a lot easier to just go ahead and figure out how we get those things sorted. Number one, an obstacle in front of you, that's pretty easy. You assess it as either a help or a hindrance. You remove the hindrance, you thank the help, and then you find a way to either get over it or past it. If you don't have enough gas in the tank, well, you assess that as well. How much money do I have in my back pocket? How close is the nearest filling station? Am I going to go regular, mid-grade, or premium in this? Perhaps this is a diesel engine, takes a whole other kind of fuel entirely. Great. Assess, look at it, ask the important questions, ask the difficult questions. That's the worst of it. The most embarrassing, vulnerable place that you can be is asking these kinds of questions that are so important to figuring out what your next steps are, but they are, what is the word? Is it awkward? They are a bit awkward, but I think it's more of a shame thing in more often than not. Because I think, especially if you're someone who's in a certain part of your life, you're like, well, by this point, I should know better. By this point, I shouldn't be having these problems still. By this point, I should have, fill in the blank, any number of these things. Great. Maybe so. If you're still dealing with it, then maybe you did not deal effectively with it enough in the first place. If you're still dealing with it, maybe you did and you've had a relapse. If you're still dealing with it, maybe you did the very best you could and it just wasn't quite enough to push it past whatever it is you're dealing with now in order to get where you want to go. Okay. Knowing is the prize here. There's no shame in it. There's no last place. If you're asking the questions and getting the answers, you're already on your way to the blue ribbon. Okay. It's, but you have to keep asking. I know I do. When I say you, it's us. We have to continue to ask those kinds of questions. What is it that's holding me back? Why is my needle just buried? Why is it resting on top of that beginning peg instead of making its way around the circle? And that can be a tough question to ask because it feels very elementary. It feels very beginner when you ask a simple question such as that. The thing is, it's an illusion of simplicity. It's not that easy to know the answer to those questions because the question continues to be asked, but the answer continues to change and evolve, which is wonderful. I would hate to know that I asked the same question. The answer stays the same. That is like basically textbook and or quixotic definition of insanity. I don't want to be insane. What I want to know is that the target continues to move because I continue to grow. So I must continue to ask the question and look for the answer at that moment so that my needle too can move. I think I'm just so tired of mediocre. I'm so absolutely exhausted with feeling as though I put some of my biggest, best, brightest, shiniest out into the world and it is met with a ho hum. It is met with a oh, this again, or it isn't met at all. It's ignored, it's sidestepped, it's naysayed. Like there are so many things I feel that whenever I try to put my best foot forward, somebody's either waiting to untie the shoelace, finish that banana and throw down the peel, or they want to step on the toe of my brand new shoe. And I don't want that to be a negative outlook. What I want that to be is just the acknowledgement of the fact that there are people out there that are going to be those people. They want to do any of those three, any combination of those three, or maybe something I didn't even think to list. I rarely think that is malice. I almost always think that comes from a place of envy and or just not knowing how to work productively on their own lives. Anytime anybody had something that nasty to me, I rarely think of that as a personal affront. There are a couple out there. There's a couple of folks they don't like me, and that's just my burden to bear, I reckon, because I'm a pretty great person. I ain't perfect, but I'm sure a whole lot of fun. And I try to be mindful and I try to do better. And that's not me patting myself on the back. That's just me saying, hey, no matter how hard you try to be a good human being, there's some folks out there that just going to hate your look. They're just not going to like the cut of your jib. So you might as well just get ready for it. If everybody likes you, you're not trying hard enough. You're not being true enough to yourself. And we need to think about that a little harder. We need to dig on that a little deeper. We. Okay. I think mediocrity is a curse that we carry with. This is a burden. It is the albatross around the neck. It is the thing that we carry around that is ugly. It smells. It is repellent. There are so many things about it that just really don't do us any favors, especially when we are capable of so much more. Oh my goodness, we are capable of so much more. I see so many people that just work themselves into an early grave and they're giving their best and their brightest to the job. And I'm here to say that is misplaced, friends. Those are pearls before swine. You may love your colleagues. That's not an affront to any of them either. What I'm saying is save your gems for the people who wear your crown. Okay? Those are the people in your life who are there for you, who will miss you when you're gone, who miss you when you are gone. They're the ones who continue to check up on you to make sure that if you're not feeling well, that maybe they bring something by the house to make sure you don't have to cook. They're the folks who will run to Walmart for you because you need Zicam or NyQuil or whatever it is your little heart desires to make sure that you can rejoin us in the land of the living. Please don't put your very best out there for a paycheck. Yes, be a valuable employee. Do the job that you were hired to do. Make sure that your balance is good between output for work and income for cash. Yes. Your best belongs with your best, meaning the people in your life, meaning your loved ones, your partner, your children, your pets, your passions. Uh-oh. I just took it from a person to an idea. Are we still able to do that? Yes. Yes, we are. We most certainly are. We're going to look at those kinds of things and we'll be like, this is what always kept my needle in the amber growing up. I was past the green because green was great and I felt really well, well accomplished. I felt that I was doing the right thing when I was in the green. Whenever I got to that amber, boy, I was really feeling myself then. Whatever it was, I was loving my art, my writing, my singing, my stagecraft, my auto repair, my woodworking, my cooking, my baking, my knitting, my needlepoint. Whatever it was that made me come alive, whatever it was that was deep inside of me that I knew I did well, maybe better than anybody else, or maybe my own way of doing it was very specific, unique, distinctive. And it made me feel like $1,000,000 because it may not have been the best out there, but everybody knew which one was mine. Saw this wonderful thing on the internet. They were talking about that feeling you get whenever you make a cake or a casserole and take it to a potluck, and everybody starts asking, "Well, who made the cake and who made the casserole?" And you just in there smirking like the cat who ate the canary. That's right. I did that. I did. For whatever reason, green bean casserole came to mind exactly at that moment. I'm thinking that cream of mushroom soup, those frizzled onions that they put on top. That's a new term I learned over the last weekend. Frizzled onions. Those that come in the can and they're fried and they're crispy. Uh, for whatever reason, that just came to mind right then whenever I was talking about the casserole that somebody made and everybody wanted to know who did it. Who is the author of this masterpiece? Who brought this culinary delight to share with the huddled masses? That's right. That is the stuff that gets you into the amber. It doesn't just get your needle off the peg. It doesn't just take you through that third of green. It gets you into the amber. And if you're real lucky, it'll get you right on the cusp of that red. It'll get you right into that orange blend. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's difficult to maintain a red needle. Not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying anything other than the fact that it is very difficult to maintain that level of output. So what I'd like for us to do is to go for a very healthy swath of green into our amber. And on occasion, whenever it feels as though we would have to look down to see the clouds, that's whenever I want us to feel as though our needle's in the red. Please tend to yourself when you know you're in that area. Okay? When your gauge is reading to that point, I want you to watch out for that. Well, Bullard, we spent the first 20 minutes of this talking about moving the needle. Now you're worried about us moving it too far. Yes, I am. And I got a real good reason for it, too. I'm a master of overcompensation. Whenever I feel as though I am not living up to a certain standard, whenever that comes to my attention, I will absolutely swing so hard in the other direction. I will hurt myself and others. I will put out so much that it will be difficult for me to maintain that level of output. I will burn out. I will harbor resentment that I can't keep that sort of level of output going for any appreciable amount of time. All of these things are not healthy for me. Now, an amber, yeah, we can keep that up for a minute, okay? That amber ain't gonna hurt nobody if you want to hold on to that for half an hour to 45 minutes. You get after it, okay? You bury yourself in your fantasy life. You put your passions first. You put your people first and watch that needle start to rise. Watch it start to make its way around that dial. And that's whenever we know we're doing it. Everything starts to get brighter. The colors pop a little bit more. The flavors are a little bit deeper, a little more savory, a little more sweet. That box of crayons smells so good. And that's just the smell. That's not even what crayons are for. Pull one of those out and you drag it across that textured paper, and it leaves this colorful trail. Tells a story, depicts a fantasy, brings it to fruition. We got to continue to work towards those things. We got to realize that there's importance in those things too. They are vital to the survival of our race, the human race, just so I'm clear on that. It reminds me of a quote that I remember from Churchill whenever they were talking about taking the funds that they would have been using for arts education to put them toward the war effort. He says, well, if you do that, then what in the world are we fighting for? I wish we always had that sort of thinking at the very front of our brains. Oh my gosh, I think that we're missing out on so much. I think that we continue to focus so much on education and not so much as the enjoyment in learning the new things, the new talent, the new text, the literature that suddenly springs to life because you've got a new way of looking at it. You've had new life experiences to apply to the reading as you do it. And those are the things that continue to keep that needle moving. Okay, now we started with an automotive gauge needle, and now I would like to go more to what I was talking about earlier, more like a lie detector test needle or a seismograph needle. Have you ever seen one of those? Whenever they attach you to a lie detector, there is a small needle that will wiggle so much, say between 1 and -1, if everything is copacetic. But if someone tells an untruth, that needle will erratically move to say 5 and -5. The spectrum will get much, much wider whenever a fib is being told. Same thing for a seismograph. Whenever you're measuring seismic activity, earthquakes, plate movement, those kinds of things, there's usually what I think of as sort of the same thing. It's like a moving squiggle, like a heart monitor. And whenever there's a tremor or an aftershock or an earthquake or things like that, it just goes absolutely bonkers. Otherwise, it's just a thin green digital line. And I want to think about things like that too. I want to continue to move through it. You know, I want that needle to go from green to amber, touch the red, come back down into amber, stay there for a minute, then maybe go to the top of the green. Same for this. I want you to go between flat line and just crazy peaks to make sure that you keep not only yourself on your toes, but all those around you. Mediocrity has a tendency to lead people into being the kinds of personalities that blend, that fade into the background, that suddenly somehow become invisible. I don't want that for any of us. It's not that you have to be an attention whore like me. I do want you to take up your space. I want you to be visible. You don't have to be in screaming neon. I would love for you to be a sensible plaid, perhaps a tasteful paisley. Who doesn't love a polka dot? Or maybe you're a swirl, a tie-dye. What I don't want you to do is be a beige. Okay? I've lived in Vegas for over 3 years now, and it makes me absolutely insane. Drives me round the bend every time I turn a corner or look toward the east or the west or basically any direction in this town. It's all mauve, taupe, neutral, ecru, sand, snooze fest. I get it. I get it. It's there for a reason because it's hotter than 3 shades of hell in this town right now. And geez Louise, what the heck would you do if your house was black? I pity the fools that drive black vehicles in this town, especially if there's leather interior. I know they're cooking on the inside. There's no amount of air conditioning can save you. When we're talking about the metaphorical color of your personality, of your spirit, of your aura, however you want to look at it, that's totally and entirely up to you. I want you to pick a color that stands out as much as you want to. And think long and hard about that, okay? Because it could be one of those things where you pick a bright pink and people can't help but notice you, and finding a quiet moment can be taxing. And then there's part of me that loves a good camo. I absolutely do. I had some red camo shorts, cargo shorts, of course, a few years back, and I wore those things until they were ribbons. Camo is made to blend. Camo is literally made to put you in the background. Is that what you want? Can you still achieve your dreams whenever you're hanging out in the background, whenever you're flying just a little bit below the radar? I don't know. That's your question to answer because I know I'm not picking that color. Nope. I want to stand out. I've put in the time. I've done the things. I've followed the dreams. I've brought many of them to fruition, and I am grateful every day. Oh my God, I wrote today and I thought to myself, wow, saying this out loud sounds so incredibly bougie. But writing in your journal is 100% okay. Why is that? Because that's me helping me, not showing off to anybody else. Sometimes you got to pat yourself on the back because God love it. Sometimes you may not be around anybody else who cares enough to do it for you whenever you've done well. Sometimes you got to move your own needle. I'm writing in my journal and I'm using a pen that I bought at a very specific boutique stationer store in Perth, Australia. I wish I could remember. I think her name is Lena, is this beautiful Eastern European woman who's worked there for the last 2 or 3 times that I've been in the shop. I am almost always in a hurry because we don't get much time in Perth free. But it's always so nice to drop in and see her and say hello and maybe smile a little, flirt a touch, etc., and then make my way out of there with my new purchase, which most recently was a new fountain pen. I still have my original that my very good friend gave to me. I keep that in my bag. I'm just scared that something going to happen to it. The other one, if something happens to it would be unfortunate. It would not be the end of the world. In the chamber, I have an adapter where you can use your own bottled ink for whatever color you like. Now, I've got an array of really nice inks that I bought from all over the world. The one that's in the barrel right now is a green that I got in Tokyo at a manga and stationer shop. What? My journal is what is it? The book, not a composite book. What is it? What is it called? Hold on, I've got it right here. Composition book. That's what it is. And on the front of it, it's got stickers from Tanzania, Kenya, Paris, Amsterdam, and New York City. And it's also got a Ted Lasso sticker on the front. Roy Kent, in this amazing scene, talking to Rebecca, says, "Don't you dare settle for fine. You deserve to feel like you've been struck by lightning." So do you. So do I. So do we all, especially if that's what we're working toward and we're willing to take those chances in order to move that needle, in order to live a life more abundantly, more colorful, more loudly, in order to accomplish your goals, not necessarily to say, look at me, to use these new methods and this new decor, if you will, to achieve these things that you have set for yourself, that you've put out in front, way out in front too. Don't be shy. Ain't no reason to be shy. Shy is just one of those things somebody tried to teach you to keep from being all that you want to be. And there ain't no reason for it. You don't need it. You don't need it. Introversion is one thing. If you just need some time to recharge, by all means, take it. I would love you to tell me that so I don't wonder if you're okay. I'm just like, oh yeah, they reached their point. They need to go refill. Super dude. Got it. I totally understand that. We got to keep working on our toolbox. We got to make sure that all of the paints on our palette are what we need, what we feel are going into our own masterpieces. And whenever we climb in the car, no matter how hot the upholstery, no matter how bad the weather outside, we got to remember to again, check the fuel gauge, see where that needle's at. Check around you, check surroundings. Are there any crazy people around you? You need to make sure that you watch closely. Are there any obstacles, any trees, any embankments you should probably steer clear of? And then whenever you get behind the wheel, crank her up, pull out ever so carefully and slowly. And while you're driving around, you make sure you do all you can to move that needle. I love the time we get to spend together. As always, it is a joy and a pleasure. It is a radical joy and a pleasure to have you with us. If this is your first episode, welcome. We are so incredibly happy that you're here. Thank you. Thank you. I think this is a pretty good intro episode. If this is your first episode with us here at Radical Joy, if it is not your first episode, welcome back. I'm thrilled that you thought enough of what we try to do here that you wanted to come back for more. It's always a pleasure to see folks in our views that have been here before and have come back. If you're the kind of person who likes to leave a review, please do so for us on whatever platform where you're listening. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Take a screenshot of that. Send it to us. Make sure we know that you've reviewed us and reviewed us favorably. And we'll be happy to send you a sticker of Radical Joy. It's got my face on it. You can stick it anywhere from a journal to a water bottle to a laptop. Anywhere you like to stick your stickers, go for it. It'll stay. As always, we're so happy that you're here. Please make sure you share this with your friends if you've gotten something out of this. Word of mouth is easily the best publicity we could ever hope for, especially if you're enjoying something and are getting something out of this. As always, friends, thank you so much for joining us. Please never forget, we love y'all. Thank you for taking time to share a moment of joy and hope with me. We're so grateful you're here. If this is your first time, take a moment to check out our archive. See if there's something else in there that fires you up, rekindles the joy in you. Hey, spread the word if you got something out of being with us today. We welcome your thoughts and suggestions. Now, I rarely run out of things to talk about, but if there's something I haven't covered that's on your mind or heart, I want to hear from you. To learn more about me and CLW Studios, follow the links in the show notes. Hey, don't forget, when you leave Radical Joy a review, be sure to send us a screenshot. We'll send you some kick-ass swag to show our gratitude. I am not a therapist or a medical professional. If you're experiencing a mental health emergency, please call 988 to reach the National Crisis Lifeline. This content and other content produced by CLW Studios and affiliated partners is not therapy, and nothing in this content indicates a therapeutic relationship. Any opinions of guests on this podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of James or CLW Studios. Please consult with your therapist or seek one in your area if you're experiencing mental health symptoms. Everything in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Have a great one, and we will see you next week for another dose of Radical Joy. Love y'all.